My name is Amos. I'm 64 years old. Last Tuesday night, my daughter Abigail called me at 9:47 p.m. Her voice was shaking so badly I thought someone had died. "Dad," she whispered, "don't come home tonight." I asked her why. I asked her if she was safe. I asked her if someone had broken into the house. She didn't answer any of it. Instead, she said 3 words that still echo in my skull. "I love you, Dad." Then she hung up. Now I've lived through a lot. Cancer, bankruptcy, burying my wife of 38 years. But nothing prepared me for what I saw when I ignored her warning and drove to my own house anyway. Because parked in my driveway, in the dark with all the lights off, was a car that wasn't supposed to be there. A car that belonged to someone I trusted, someone who had no reason to be in my house. And when I looked through the basement window, when I saw who was down there with a crowbar, breaking into my safe, I realized my daughter hadn't been protecting me. She'd been protecting them. What I witnessed that night wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a betrayal so deep it shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. But here's the thing they didn't count on. I'm not the kind of man who walks away quietly. If you want to know whose car was in my driveway, if you want to know what my own family was stealing from me, and if you want to see how a 64-year-old man got his revenge without throwing a single punch, then subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that like button, ring the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me, would you have confronted them or walked away? Because what happens next will leave you speechless. Let's start now. I need you to understand something before I go any further. I'm not a complicated man. I worked construction for 42 years. I paid my taxes. I raised 2 daughters, Abigail and Martha. And when my wife, Grace, got sick, I sat by her hospital bed every single night for 9 months until she passed. I've never asked for much, just honesty, respect, the kind of trust that holds a family together when everything else falls apart. So when my phone rang that Tuesday night, and I saw Abigail's name light up the screen, I smiled. I was at my brother Obed's place, helping him replace some rotted boards on his back deck. Obed's 10 years younger than me, still thinks he can do everything himself, but his knees aren't what they used to be. So I drove over after dinner with my toolbox and a 6-pack of root beer. Neither of us drink anymore. "You gonna get that?" Obed asked, nodding at my phone. I pulled off my work gloves and answered, "Hey, sweetheart?" Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that makes your chest tighten. "Abby?" I said. "Dad." Her voice was thin, strained, like she was forcing the words through a collapsed windpipe. I straightened up. "What's wrong?" "I need you to do something for me," she said, "and I need you to not ask questions." My stomach dropped. Abigail's 32 years old, a high school counselor, married to Emil for 6 years. She doesn't talk like this. She doesn't sound afraid. "Abby, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Dad, please, just listen." Her breath hitched. "Don't come home tonight." I blinked. "What?" "Stay at Uncle Obed's, or go to a hotel. I don't care. Just don't come home." The hammer I'd been holding slipped out of my hand and clattered onto the deck. Obed looked over, concerned. "Abigail Marie, you need to tell me what's happening right now," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Is someone in the house? Are you safe?" "I'm fine. I'm not at the house. I'm—" She stopped. I heard voices in the background. Muffled. Tense. "Who's with you?" I demanded. "Dad, I can't explain right now. I just need you to trust me. Please, don't come home tonight. I'll call you tomorrow and explain everything." "Like hell you will. I love you, Dad." And then she hung up. I stood there in Obed's yard, staring at my phone like it had just told me the world was ending. "Amos?" Obed walked over, wiping sawdust off his hands. "What happened?" I didn't answer. I was already replaying the call in my head, the tremor in her voice, the way she said "I love you" like it was the last time she'd ever say it, like she was saying goodbye. "Amos." Obed grabbed my shoulder. "Talk to me." "She told me not to come home," I said quietly. "Why?" She wouldn't say. Obed frowned. "You think something's wrong? You want me to drive over there with you?" I thought about it. About Abigail's voice. About the person I knew her to be. Calm, logical, the kind of daughter who'd call me if a pipe burst or if she needed help moving furniture. She didn't do cryptic. She didn't do secrets, which meant something was very wrong. "No," I said, grabbing my keys off the deck railing. "I'm going alone." "Amos, if she told you to stay away—" "Then she's hiding something," I said, "and I'm her father. I don't stay away." I got in my truck and pulled out of Obed's driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The drive to my house took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. A break-in, an intruder, Emil hurt, Martha in trouble. But when I turned onto my street and saw my house, dark, quiet, exactly the way I'd left it that morning, I felt a flicker of relief until I saw the car in my driveway. A silver Audi. New, expensive. Emil's car. My son-in-law's car. The same son-in-law who'd told me 3 days ago he was in Boston for a work conference. The same son-in-law who'd sent me a photo of his hotel room to prove it. I killed my headlights 2 houses down and parked on the street. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And that's when I realized. Abigail hadn't been warning me. She'd been trying to hide something. I sat in my truck for a full minute, staring at that silver Audi like it was a ghost. Emil was supposed to be in Boston. I'd talked to him 2 nights ago. He'd called me from his hotel, told me about some keynote speaker at his marketing conference, complained about the overpriced room service. So why was his car in my driveway at 10:30 at night? And why were all the lights in my house turned off? I got out of the truck slowly, quietly, closing the door with barely a sound. The street was dead silent. Mrs. Chen's porch light flickered 2 doors down. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. I moved up the sidewalk, staying low, my boots crunching softly on the gravel. The front door was locked. No signs of forced entry. Everything looked normal, except for the faint glow coming from the basement window. My workshop. I crouched down by the side of the house, my knees protesting, and crept toward the small rectangular window that looked down into the basement. The glass was dirty, covered in a film of dust and spider webs, but I could see through it well enough, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. Emil was on his knees in front of my safe. The safe I'd bolted into the concrete wall 30 years ago. The safe where I kept Grace's jewelry. The deed to the house. Birth certificates. And $47,000 in cash. Money I'd saved, penny by penny, for emergencies. For my daughter's futures. He had a crowbar in his hand. And he wasn't alone. Standing next to him, holding a flashlight, was my younger daughter. Martha, 26 years old, the one who cried at her mother's funeral and told me she'd take care of the family, the one I put through nursing school by working double shifts and selling my truck. She was handing him tools, calmly, methodically, like they'd done this before. I pressed my hand against the side of the house to steady myself. My vision blurred. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and crushed my lungs. I watched Emil wedge the crowbar into the seam of the safe door, watched Martha brace the flashlight so he could see better, and then I heard her laugh. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh, a real one. "Finally," she said, "I thought this thing was indestructible." "Almost there," Emil grunted, putting his weight into the crowbar. The lock gave with a metallic snap. The safe door swung open. Martha leaned in, pulling out Grace's jewelry box, the wooden one I'd made for her in shop class when we were dating. She set it on the floor like it was a box of old magazines. Then Emil reached in and pulled out the cash. $47,000, rubber banded in stacks of hundreds. He held it up, grinning. Jackpot. Martha exhaled, visibly relieved. "Okay, Now we can pay Bright off and end this." Bright. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Bright was Martha's ex-boyfriend, a deadbeat she'd dated 3 years ago, some wannabe entrepreneur who always had a big idea and never had a job. I told her to stay away from him, told her he was trouble. She'd promised me she had, but clearly she'd lied. "How much does he want again?" Emil asked, rifling through the cash. "50,000, Martha said quietly. "But this'll cover most of it. I can get the rest from my savings." "You sure he'll leave you alone after this?" "He has to. He said if I pay, we're done. No more threats. No more showing up at the hospital." I felt my jaw tighten. Threats. Martha was being threatened. And instead of coming to me, her father, the man who'd raised her, protected her, she'd decided to rob me? I was about to stand up, about to bang on that window and put an end to this. But then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Abigail was standing there in the shadows of the driveway, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. She saw me, and she didn't look surprised. She looked guilty. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, let me explain." I stared at my daughter standing in the shadows of my driveway, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize her. This was Abigail, my firstborn, the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest watching cartoons, the one who held my hand at her mother's funeral and promised we'd get through it together. And she'd just helped orchestrate a robbery against me. "Explain?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You want to explain why your sister and your husband are in my basement stealing everything I have left?" She flinched like I'd struck her. "Dad, I know how this looks." "How this looks?" I took a step toward her. "Abigail, I just watched Martha pull your mother's jewelry out of that safe like it was garbage. I watched Emil count my money I saved for 40 years, like it was his lottery winnings. And you're standing here telling me you can explain this?" Tears poured down her face. "I tried to keep you away. I told you not to come home. I was trying to protect you from seeing this." "Protect me?" My voice cracked. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting them. Because you don't understand," she said desperately, her voice rising. "Martha's in trouble, Dad. Real trouble. The kind that doesn't just go away." I stopped. "What kind of trouble?" Abigail glanced back at the house, then grabbed my arm and pulled me further into the shadows, away from the basement window. "Martha's been stealing," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "Stealing what?" "Medication. From the hospital. Fentanyl. Oxycodone. High-grade painkillers." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "She's using," I said, my voice barely audible. "No," Abigail said quickly. "No, Dad, she's not using. She's been taking them for Bright." That name again. Bright. "Why the hell is she doing anything for that piece of—" "Because he's threatening her," Abigail cut me off. "He got himself into debt with some bad people. Really bad people, Dad. And he dragged Martha into it. He told her if she didn't help him, he'd go to the hospital administration and tell them she was stealing drugs. She'd lose her nursing license. She'd go to jail." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "So she actually did steal the drugs," I said slowly. Abigail nodded, wiping her eyes. "She did it to protect herself, to keep him quiet. But then the people Bright owes found out she had access to medication, and they wanted in. They started pressuring him, and he started pressuring Martha. How much does he owe?" $50,000. I closed my eyes. 50,000. Almost exactly what was in my safe. "And you thought robbing me was the solution?" I said. "We didn't have a choice," Abigail said, her voice breaking. "Martha came to me 3 weeks ago, terrified. She said Bright's people gave her a deadline. 2 weeks to come up with the money or they'd turn her in and hurt her. She was talking about running away, Dad. Leaving the state, disappearing." "So you called Emil?" She nodded miserably. "He came up with the plan. We'd take the money from your safe. Just borrow it. We'd replace it before you ever noticed. We'd tell you it was for an investment or home repairs or something. Martha would pay off Bright's people, and this whole nightmare would be over. I stared at her. And you actually believed that would work? I didn't know what else to do, she cried. Martha's my sister. She made a horrible mistake, but she's family. I couldn't just let her lose everything. I couldn't let her go to prison. So instead, you lied to me, I said quietly. You used me. You let your husband break into my home and steal from me while you stood guard. I was trying to save her, Abigail whispered. By destroying me? She looked down, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I stood there, my heart pounding, my mind racing through everything she'd just told me. Martha wasn't a thief by choice. She was being blackmailed. Bright had turned my daughter into a criminal. And now my own family had turned against me to fix it. But here's what Abigail didn't understand. Here's what none of them understood. I wasn't the kind of man who rolled over when people hurt the ones I loved. I'd buried my wife. I'd survived cancer. I'd rebuilt my life from nothing more than once, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let some lowlife named Bright destroy my daughter. I looked at Abigail, my voice steady and cold. Where is he? She blinked. What? Bright, where does he live? Dad, no. Tell me where he is, Abigail. Right now. She shook her head frantically. You can't go after him. These people are dangerous. I don't care, I said. You want to protect Martha? Fine, but we're doing it my way now. I turned and started walking toward the basement window. Dad, wait! Abigail grabbed my arm. What are you going to do? I looked back at her and I saw the fear in her eyes. Good. I'm going to end this, I said. Tonight. I yanked my arm free from Abigail's grip and walked straight to the side door of my house, the one that leads directly down to the basement. Dad, please. Abigail was right behind me, her voice desperate. I didn't answer. I unlocked the door and descended the wooden stairs, my boots echoing in the silence. Emil heard me first. He spun around, still holding a stack of my cash, his face going pale. Amos. Put it down, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Martha dropped the flashlight. It clattered onto the concrete floor, the beam spinning wildly before settling on the open safe. Dad, I can explain, she started. I said, put it down, I repeated, staring at Emil. He hesitated, then slowly set the money on the workbench beside him. I walked forward, stopping a few feet away from them both. Abigail came down the stairs behind me, hovering near the bottom, wringing her hands. For a long moment, nobody spoke. I looked at the mess they'd made. The crowbar on the floor, Grace's jewelry box sitting open, her wedding ring glinting under the bare bulb overhead. The cash spread out like they were counting down a hostage payment. $50,000, I said quietly. That's what Bright wants, right? Martha's eyes widened. She glanced at Abigail. She told you, Martha whispered. She told me everything, I said. About the drugs, about the blackmail, about how you've been stealing medication to keep that waste of space from ruining your life. Martha's face crumpled. Dad, I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I cut her off. You could have come to me. You could have told me the truth. I was ashamed, she said, her voice breaking. I was terrified you'd look at me the way you're looking at me right now. And how am I looking at you, Martha? She didn't answer, just stood there, tears streaming down her face. I turned to Emil. And you thought this was the solution? Breaking into my house like a common criminal? I was trying to help, Emil said, his voice tight. Abigail came to me, panicking. Martha was falling apart. I thought if we could just get the money quietly, fix the problem, nobody would have to know. Nobody would have to know, I repeated slowly. You mean I wouldn't have to know. Emil looked down. I took a breath, trying to control the rage boiling under my skin. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to put every single thing back in that safe. The money, the jewelry, everything. But Dad, Martha started. I'm not finished. I looked at her hard. You're not paying Bright a damn dime of my money. You're not paying him anything at all. Dad, he'll turn me in. No, he won't, I said, because I'm going to deal with him myself. The basement went silent. Abigail stepped forward. Dad, you can't just... I can, and I will. I looked at all three of them. Mata made a mistake, a big one. But Bright's the one who put her in this position. He's the one who threatened her, manipulated her, turned her into something she's not. I felt my jaw tighten. And I'm not letting some coward hold my daughter hostage. Amos, these people are dangerous, Emil said quietly. The kind of people Bright's involved with. They don't negotiate. They don't forgive debts. I don't care, I said flatly. You'll get hurt. Then I'll get hurt. I looked at Mata, and my voice softened just a fraction. But I'll be damned if I let you throw your life away for him. Mata broke down completely, covering her face with her hands. Abigail wrapped her arms around her sister, both of them crying. I turned and walked back up the basement stairs, pulling out my phone. Dad, who are you calling? Abigail called after me. I didn't answer. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name I was looking for. Obed. He picked up on the second ring. Amos, you okay? No, I said, but I'm about to be. I need your help, and I need you to call in a favor. What kind of favor? I looked back down at the basement, at my daughters, at Emil, at the wreckage of trust scattered across my workshop floor. The kind that ends a problem, I said, permanently. 2 nights later, I stood in the parking lot of an abandoned diner off Route 9, waiting for a man I'd never met but already hated. Obed stood beside me, arms crossed, his jaw set. He'd brought his friend Marcus, a retired detective who'd worked organized crime for 20 years and still had connections that could make problems disappear. Marcus leaned against his truck, a small recording device clipped to his jacket pocket. You sure about this, Amos? Obed asked quietly. I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Headlights cut through the darkness. A black SUV rolled into the lot, music thumping from inside. It parked 20 feet away, engine idling. The driver's door opened. Bright stepped out. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, wearing a leather jacket and too much cologne, gold chain around his neck, the kind of guy who thought intimidation was a personality trait. He saw me and smirked. You're the dad, huh? He walked closer, hands in his pockets. Mata said you were some old man who wouldn't get involved. Guess she was wrong. I didn't move, didn't blink. You're Bright. That's right. He stopped a few feet away, looking me up and down. So, what's this about? Mata finally tell you she owes me? She doesn't owe you anything, I said calmly. He laughed. That's not how debt works, old man. She took my product. She moved it for me. And now the people I owe want their money. 50 grand. Non-negotiable. She was stealing medication because you blackmailed her, I said. You threatened to turn her in if she didn't help you. Bright shrugged. She had a choice. She chose to help me. Now she pays the price. Wrong. I took a step forward. You're the one who's going to pay. His smirk faded slightly. He glanced at Obed, then at Marcus. You brought backup? That's supposed to scare me? No, I said. This is. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Bright's voice crackled through the speaker, a recording from 3 days ago. Marcus had pulled some strings, tapped into a conversation Bright had with one of his buddies at a bar downtown. Yeah, that nurse is perfect. She's terrified, does whatever I say. I got her moving Oxy for me, and if she tries to bail, I'll just tell the hospital she's been stealing. She'll take the fall, and I'll walk away clean. Bright's face went white. That recording, I said, my voice steady. It's already in the hands of someone who'd love to close a case like this. Marcus here used to work narcotics. He's got friends in the DEA. 1 phone call, and you're done. Conspiracy, drug trafficking, coercion. You'll do 10 years minimum. Bright's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Marcus stepped forward, pulling a badge from his pocket. His old one, retired but still official-looking enough to make a point. "Try me," Marcus said coldly. Silence. Bright looked between the three of us, his confidence cracking. "What do you want?" he finally said. "Mata's debt is gone," I said. "All of it. You never contact her again. You never threaten her. You don't show up at her work. You don't even say her name. You disappear." "And if I don't?" "Then that recording goes live," I said, "and I make sure everyone you owe knows you've been cooperating with the police. How long do you think you'd last?" Bright's face twisted with rage. "You think you're some kind of hero? She's a criminal, too." "She made a mistake," I interrupted, my voice hardening. "A mistake you forced her into. But she's done. And so are you." He stared at me for a long moment, breathing hard. Then he spat on the ground. "Fine, the debt's gone, but you better keep her out of my way." "She will," I said, "because she's done with you. And if I ever see you near her again, I don't call the DEA. I come back myself, and I won't be this generous." Obed cracked his knuckles. Marcus smiled thinly. Bright got back in his SUV, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. The three of us stood there in the empty lot, watching his taillights disappear. Obed clapped me on the shoulder. "Damn, Amos, didn't know you had that in you." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Neither did I admitted. Marcus pocketed the recorder. "That recording's real, by the way. If he comes back, we can actually use it." "Good," I said. I looked out at the empty highway, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But the hardest part was still ahead. I had to go home, and I had to face my daughters. The next morning, I called a family meeting. Abigail, Mata, and Emil sat in my living room like defendants waiting for sentencing. None of them would look at me. I stood by the window where Grace used to water her plants, looking out at the yard. "Bright's gone," I said quietly. Mata's head snapped up. "What?" "I met with him 2 nights ago. The debt's erased. He won't bother you again." Tears filled her eyes. "Dad, how did you—" "Doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is what happens now." I turned to face them. "You all lied to me. You stole from me. You chose secrecy over trust." Emil started to speak. I held up a hand. "But I also understand something I didn't before," I continued. "You were desperate, scared, and in your own broken way, you thought you were protecting each other." I looked at Mata. "You're going to quit that hospital, find new work, honest work, and you're going to pay me back every cent. Not from shortcuts, not from anyone else, from your own salary, $500 a month until it's done." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, Dad." I turned to Emil. "You and Abigail are going to counseling. Real counseling. Because if you're going to stay in this family, you need to understand what loyalty actually means." "We will," Emil said quietly. "I promise." Finally, I looked at Abigail, my eldest, my rock. "And you," I said softly, "you're going to stop trying to fix everything for everyone. You're not responsible for your sister's choices. You never were." She broke. Full, heaving sobs. I walked over and put my hand on her shoulder. "I forgive you," I said. "All of you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means we do better. Starting now." Abigail grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but we're going to get through this. Together." 3 months later, things are different. Mata got a job at a community clinic. She's paying me back, slowly but steadily. She's also in therapy, working through the guilt and fear. Emil and Abigail are still in counseling. It's messy. There are hard days. But they're trying. And me? I'm 64 years old. I've been betrayed by the people I loved most. But I'm still standing. I still have my daughters, my family, my dignity. And I learned something through all of this. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes the greatest revenge is choosing to rebuild, to forgive without forgetting, to love without being foolish. Grace would have been proud of that. I think about her every day, what she would have said, how she would have handled this. And I know, deep down, she'd tell me I did the right thing. Not the easy thing, the right thing. Because that's what family does. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And that's the end of Amos's story. A father who was betrayed, broken, but chose forgiveness over bitterness, and revenge that didn't destroy, but rebuilt. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like button. Drop a comment telling me, would you have forgiven them or walked away forever? I read every single comment. And if you want more raw, real stories about family, betrayal, and second chances, turn on notifications. The next story drops soon, and it'll shake you to your core. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose to still love. See you in the next one.